All right, it says we are live, so let me go ahead and check Facebook real quick just to make sure I'm getting in my announcer mode. Okay, it says we are live, so that's awesome. Okay, perfect. All right, well, hey, everyone, welcome to the show. It is Tuesday evening, and you know what time that is for. It is Good Questions, Bad Answers, and I have a lot of new followers, a lot of new friends. And for those of you that don't know what this show is about, it's basically a Facebook Live conversation about anything, right? I mean, we talk about different topics, we talk about different things, and this is a show that is really geared around you, the viewer, talking about whatever. You can bring up a topic. You can even, at some points, we'll even put in a link where you can hop on the show with us and chat with us, as well as ask questions in the comments. So this really is our time together where we can share our thoughts and we can share whatever we want to talk about. However, saying that, I don't want this show to become a political show where it's, either far right or far left. I like it to be very open-minded. And there might be some topics we talk about tonight or in the future where we may not all agree. And that's fine. This is a safe place to talk about anything we want to talk about. But we also got to remind ourselves that if we don't agree with each other, that's okay. We can agree to disagree as long as we do it in civility. So welcome to our Facebook Live. And if you're listening to this on podcast, thank you so much for spending your evening and time with us. If you want to go ahead and use the comments, be sure to say hello and tell us where you're watching from. My name is Joshua Jack. Thank you so much for being here. My co-host,
Tim Izzo.
And let's start chatting. I need to come up with a byline, or not a byline, but I need to come up with like a welcome. Do you ever watch Frasier?
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm listening. That show.
Yep. Dude, that was a great show. That was a great show. I mean, that was like the quintessential. I mean, that was just a great show. The writing was good. It was funny to everyone. Right. It was funny to everybody. It was funny to the people that were really cerebral. That was really high thinking, and it was funny to people. And not to insult anybody, but it was funny to people that weren't high thinking. I mean, it was just funny all the way around. It was really great writing. Anyway, Frasier. Hey, Justin, man, thank you so much. Oh, by the way, Justin brought up a great point from last time's show. He reached out and commented, and it kind of, and I don't think people caught it. Why did Trump create the Space Force? And Justin brought up a really good point. He said in the last week's show after the fact when he watched it, he said that, well, with all the private companies going into space, you need something to police that. And I'm like, that I did not even think about that. I'm like, man, that was what? So I think that was a great point on Justin's part. Thank you so much for
that didn't occur to me, but you definitely need that. That would be an error to not have that.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's something I just never thought about. And by the way, folks, if you are on my personal page or on Good Questions, Bad Answers, sometimes you may not see other people commenting, but that's okay. You can join one or the other, and you can go ahead and comment. It shows we have around 8 viewers right now, which, again, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, go ahead and pop them in the comments, and we'll talk. And it can be about anything, but here again, I don't want to get too political. So, and Lord knows there's enough going on right now that we could talk about. So we did talk about Donnie Darko last week, and you went and watched it this past weekend.
Yes, I did.
So what? Okay, all right. First off, let's put a banner, and let's try not to do spoiler alerts, possible spoiler alerts. And for those of you that are listening on podcast, I put up a banner saying possible spoiler alerts. So if you have not watched Donnie Darko, sorry. So what do you think about it?
I thought I was kind of blown away that I had never watched it before because it was a really good movie. In the beginning, I was kind of like, all right, this is a little there's some dark pieces to it. And then I was kind of like, this is interesting. I'm a little confused of what's going on exactly. And then it kind of, unraveled. And then as, I don't want to give too many spoilers away, right. But then as the turning point kind of happened when things really started to fall into place, it blew my mind, and I was just like, whoa, I can't believe all that just happened. But it made sense to me. My first thought was that he did it to save everybody else from what was going on.
Right.
And I thought that was awesome because I was like, I couldn't believe that went back, and then that, it was him at the end who was,
Right. Well, it's interesting. There's 3 movies out there that really. It's the kind of movie where you feel like you had to go talk to someone afterwards, right? There's 3 movies in my life where, after I watched them, I felt like I had to go talk to someone. Donnie Darko is one of them. Justin says this. It's been a while since I saw it first. It was better than I remembered. I totally agree. I went and saw it again this past weekend just to make sure. Now, I did not watch the editors or the director's cut. I just watched the regular one. And I think that the director's cut is a little bit longer. And I think it's so hard nowadays, right? Because they come out with the regular one, then they come out with the director's cut, and you don't know whether it's really better or not. Some movies, that is the case. Other movies, it's not so well done. It's just adding in extra crap that you don't really care. And I looked up the difference, and I think they, I feel bad for Smurfette. Yeah, you have to watch the movie, guys.
Yep. That was so interesting. I was like, huh, all right.
Yeah, I never thought about that. You learn so much from these movies.
Yep.
But going back, there's 3 movies out there, and I'm sure we'll talk about them at some point. One of them was Donnie Darko. That was the one that kind of made me think about, like, I need to talk to someone after this. The other one is The Butterfly Effect.
I love that. That's been a long time since I've seen that.
Yeah, and
that was another one that was just like...
Yeah, that's another one I need to go back and watch. And honestly, I don't really care for Ashton Kutcher as a actor, but he was really good in that.
He was good in that.
This was during, and he's gotten better as an actor. But this was during the time that he, like right around that time, he also came out with a movie called, Dude, Where's My Car? And that was the dumbest movie I ever saw. And at least my opinion. And, but, Butterfly Effect was a great movie. It was one of those that, got your brain thinking, you think about, and I think the reason why people gravitate towards these kind of movies is we all are enamored with time, right? Because that's all we have, really. And then we also think about to our own lives, like, well, what would have happened had I turned left instead of right? Or what would have happened had I said yes instead of saying no, or saying no instead of saying yes? And I think that's why those movies kind of tickle our brains and tickle our imagination, because, Lord knows, that we all do it.
Absolutely.
So Butterfly Effect. And then the third movie, which a lot of people don't know about, is called The Jacket. And it's with Adrian Brody. And if anybody's watched it, let me know what you think about it. And we'll probably talk about that in a future episode.
That's one I got to watch.
Yeah, and here again, I don't want to give anything away. Kind of like, because like I said, had we explained things with Donnie Darko tonight and someone went and watched it, it wouldn't be as, oh, wow, there's certain movies you can't really talk about until you watch it, right? Because if you give away anything, you don't want anybody going in there with a preconceived notion of what is about to occur.
Yep.
Right. So, like with Butterfly, one of these days I'm going to learn how to talk, but like the Butterfly Effect, if you went and tried to explain that to someone before they went and watched it, they would have preconceived notions and they wouldn't get the feeling.
Yeah, I'm trying to hold back, because in school we grew up and we read, I think it was a short story, and it was a very similar thing to the Butterfly Effect. And
what was it? Do you remember?
I can't remember the title, but basically some guy went back in time and did something very minor. And when he went forward in time, like I think he stepped on a butterfly. And then when he went forward in time, it totally altered everything. And I'm trying to think of the story. It's going to bother me.
Well, if you remember it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll probably look it up and we'll bring it up next week. Justin says he hasn't seen that one. Yeah, a lot of people haven't. It was an indie film, and like I said, The Jacket is it has Adrian Brody in it, and it has Keira Knightley in it.
That's a good cast.
Yeah.
Adrian is he was the actor in The Pianist, right?
Right.
Yeah, he's a great actor.
And it came out in 2000. I remember watching it for the first time in Afghanistan. So it came out in 2004 or 5 time frame. And if you can find it, it's definitely worth a good watch. It's like I said, it also deals with man, I can't even. I don't want to even ruin it for people. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, I wish we could do a show where members only, where we could actually have a good conversation about certain things. Because like I said, I don't want to give spoilers away. But Yeah. Anyway, good movie. We'll talk about that some other time. So, Tim, how was your week? How are things going?
I mean, it was pretty good. I feel like it was kind of uneventful. I don't feel like I have too much to say.
Yeah.
But I'm like kind of blanking and going back. I mean, like so many times I go through my week, and when I'm done with my week, I kind of just leave that behind and keep moving forward. So there's a lot of times I don't quite remember exactly all the details of what was exciting in the previous week.
Right. Justin says this Donnie Darko soundtrack is awesome. It is. It's the 80s. And you know, it's funny, the song by Gary Jules, I need to look up the name. Gary Jules, Mad World.
Oh, yeah.
Mad World. Fantastic, fantastic song. But funny enough, Mad World was originally sung by let's see, who was it? Tears for Fears. And it's completely different. Like it has a completely different sound to it. So yeah, if you didn't know that, go listen to Mad World by Tears for Fears, another 80s band, and it sounds totally different. Let's see. So this week, man, there's a lot going on in the world, huh? We have a storm in the Gulf that's coming to New Orleans, which is where I'm currently at. So exciting. The world is going crazy, and no one cares about COVID anymore. So, right? I mean,
you're absolutely right. It's amazing.
You know, going back to Donnie Darko, because I did decide to go look at, because sometimes you see things, and that's another beauty of the internet nowadays, right? Like, if you see something and you're not sure about it, well, guess what? You can get on your phone, right? You can get on your phone and you can figure out, well, what did this really mean? But back in the day, like even in 2003, 2004, 99, when these movies came out, it's like the internet was there, but it wasn't like you couldn't really find a whole lot of information. Now it's like you go find something and it doesn't make sense. Well, you can go immediately and go find out what it's about. But anyway, so something with Donnie Darko, and then also the multiverse, right? You have your primary universe, and then you have a tangent universe, which is like, things that were supposed to happen but didn't, and like people, instead of turning left, turn right. And I kind of feel like we as a country have veered off into a tangent universe. Like, this is weird. This wasn't, like every day is a bizarro world or something.
Yeah.
Justin says virus is last week's news. It's interesting. No, it's true. Hey, my mom joined. Thanks, Mom.
Welcome.
No, she's awesome. But I find, and maybe I'm wrong, and here again, like I said, everyone, if you're listening now, or if you want to have a conversation about it, let's talk about it. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? What is going on in your city? What's going on in your life? Let's have a chat. What's going on in your life? Talk to us about what do you think about what's going on in the world today. I feel that we, especially in the United States, we have the memory of elephants, but we have the attention span of gnats. So we remember these things, of these problems that we have, but we don't have enough attention span to actually work on it and make it better. And I think that's a problem that we have in society. And I'm not blaming one segment or the other. I think it's all of our problems. Because there's some glaring problems on certain sides, and and it's a balancing thing too, because it's not, like I said, it's not just one side. It's everybody's side. And when you veer too much on one side, well, you're not taking into account for this. And so even if you fix this over here, it's not fixing this over here. And for those that are listening on podcasts, you can't see me. I'm trying to do the balancing act, like with my hands, to kind of show the difference on, like I said, if you only focus on one aspect of a problem, and that's, oh man. And then the other thing is unintended consequences. Sometimes we don't know what the unintended consequences of things are until way after the fact.
Yeah.
Like it could be 20 years after the fact. And as I'm getting older, I'm starting to realize how much time is nothing. Like it's like that. I mean, I'm snapping my fingers here, but time and things can change so much in a very short amount of time. And even though 20 years sounds like a lot, it's really not. I mean, we've only had the internet since roughly the year 2000. I mean, it came out in 90s. I mean, it came out earlier, but it didn't really start getting commercially viable until the year 2000. So here we are 20 years later. And what are the unintended consequences of that? Like, where are we as a society? And we've talked about this before, but the thing I'm kind of worried about is we've gotten better connected, but we're not better connected. Like our quantity of connection is better, but our quality of connection is horrible. I mean, if you look at I know I'm talking, so if you have any questions, be sure, Tim, if you have any ideas or thoughts, be sure to, interrupt me, because I don't want to.
On a roll. Keep going.
Yeah,
man.
I know, but but here, this is a conversation. It's supposed to be anyway. But I mean, if you look at the written correspondence from any time from from the 90s on back, where people actually wrote each other letters, like they wrote letters. And even though, and it took weeks to get to the point, people had pen pals and now it's like, we can't be bothered to send more than a couple LOL or or these little diatribes to save time. And people don't talk anymore. People don't have original thought, it seems. Marcel says this: further and more connections, but fewer interpersonal connections. Right. The thing that bugs me the most about, especially on Facebook, is whenever I write a post, I like to think about what I'm writing. What frustrates me to no end, and I'm not, and here again, if you do this, I don't hate you. No, I mean, it's just, but what frustrates me is when I see these things, these people post these different posts, and at first you're like, oh man, they are putting some time and thought into something, and they're writing something. And then halfway through it, I realize, oh wait, this is a copy paste send. So they didn't put any thought, they just read it, and it's like, can I get two people to copy and paste this? It's like, really, people, come on. If something is really that important to you, take the time, put some thought into it, put your own stories or your own thoughts, and then write it out. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, there's certain other people that write things, and I'll share that from time to time if it's really truly thought provoking. But I don't know. It's crazy. It's crazy. What are your thoughts? What do you think, man? Tim, what's on your mind?
Oh man, I don't know. I feel like a lot was just thrown at me.
Yeah, I know, right? Bam.
Yeah, no, I think what you're saying about how a lot of people don't realize the repercussions of what's going on. I mean, we're seeing a lot of the shorter repercussions happening right now that I don't think people expected. Like the whole fact that the protesting had some people who turned it more violent, and then that more violent turned into the government getting involved and right. trying to stop it. And then that's, creating even more polarity, because sometimes what the government or, the National Guard or whoever it is that has to come in and try to help enforce it, they might not act as well as, we are hoping that they would act to deal with the crowds. And that might spark even more incentive for people to be, protesting and doing more intense things. And right. I think that a lot of people don't realize that it's not the way to solve the problem.
Right.
And I get that we're trying to get people to listen to what's really going on and where the injustice lies. But sometimes I think people are just taking it too far, and then the message kind of gets blurred, and what we're trying to accomplish doesn't get accomplished. And then eventually, like what you said, we get, our attention spans, goes off the rails, and then we're doing something else, and we never really solved what we were supposed to try to solve.
Well, and rightfully so. It's like, it seems that we chase our tails.
Yeah.
Like every 3 years, or every 2 years, or every so often, there's a tragedy that happens, and we'll change our Facebook profile pages. We'll do this, and we'll do these things, but we don't really spend time and effort in really trying to solve the problem. Yeah. We tend to gloss over it, and then we're on to something else.
Yep.
Only to revisit it in another cycle. And then not only that, I mean, the problem with movements, and I wrote something about this on Facebook earlier. The problem with movements is, it could be a righteous cause at first, but then you have other movements that hijack that movement.
Absolutely.
And the same thing happened in the Arab rising, the spring. Oh gosh, back in 2016 when all the Arab countries revolted, and what started off on a right path maybe, got hijacked by extremists, and then it ruined the whole thing. Justin says this is why I started watching your Facebook lives. I would scroll and look at a bunch of nonsense, and then I saw you talking about stuff that I think people needed to hear. Well, thanks, Justin. I appreciate that.
I agree with that.
I mean, we live in such a unique time that anybody can share their thoughts directly with everybody. Jared says, throw a Band-Aid on it. Yeah.
We're good at that.
Yeah, no, let's throw a Band-Aid on it. Move, in the Marine Corps, Doc, my leg has fallen off. Well, here, take some Motrin. You'll be okay. Here, take 2 of these. Drink some water. Change your socks. And that's exactly what happens. Like we have some serious problems that we need to talk about, and that's the rote response that people is like, either they're not in the right authority to really answer the question, and so they obfuscate, or they do these stupid things to kind of just kick the can along, and nothing happens, nothing gets fixed. And the thing is I see both sides of the equation very well. Like, placing in America, I mean, there's some issues there. However, there's also some issues in different, in the Black community, in the white community, in all our communities that need to be addressed as well. So, and here again, I think it kind of goes. And here, by the way, I'm not. This is just me talking. You don't have to agree. That's fine. But I think that with and I wrote something else on Facebook as well. I think that we tend to only be interested in the truth as long as it fits our view.
Absolutely.
Once we come across truth that doesn't necessarily jive with what we feel is whatever, then it kind of goes back to that thing we were talking about a couple weeks ago, the blowback effect. We take it as an assault, and instead of actually looking for unity, we're devolving into tribes based on ideals. When I was over in for a time, I lived in East Africa. I spent a year and a half in Kenya, and when I was there, as a white person walking down the middle of the downtown, I didn't feel. I wasn't worried. I didn't feel like no one cared about me. But let me tell you something. They hated each other. And it was based off of tribes. They had different tribes over there. They had the Kikuyu, they had the Maasai, they had the they had all sorts of tribes. And they could tell each other apart. I couldn't, but they hated each other. They hated each other. I mean, they were so, and it wasn't racism, it was tribalism. But it was the same thing. It was based off hatred for whatever reason, because they believe something different. And then you could take it even one step further. I mean, look at Northern Ireland. I mean, you had the Catholics versus Protestants. Like why kill each other over these different things? Like, and people, they take their tribalism to the extreme, and then that causes more waves or more issues, and so these are some serious things, and so like I said last week or the week before last, what makes us a success? Oh my gosh, I can't talk. I need some more water. What makes a society successful? Well, unity, a common ground, and the thing is no one's looking for common ground anymore, in my experience.
I was really hoping that, like, a kind of a world disaster. I wasn't hoping for a world disaster. But I was hoping that
there's a hurricane in the Gulf. There's not a hurricane yet,
but I was hoping that, like, something could set aside our differences and make us look at the bigger picture. That as, like, a human race, we need to do stuff to survive together and put aside our petty differences, because as a whole, we all want to be successful and strive, and yet I was hoping there would be something that could unify us, like a pandemic or whatever, where people and governments would kind of stop their differences and work together to build, a vaccine, or work together with research and all these things. And it's just a shame that then we have these little events that happen, maybe not little, but we have events that happen that then kind of break us back up again, and instead of trying to unify us and looking at the bigger picture.
Well, and then again, I mean, obviously that could be a tinfoil hat topic right there.
I've thought about that.
I mean, which we don't have one. Maybe it is time for tinfoil hat time. No, but, and folks, for those of you that are new, tinfoil hat time is where we talk about conspiracy theories or whatever else that comes to mind that is just a little bit off topic. But real quick, Marcel says systematic and chronic hatred because that's all they ever known. That's right. And that's, it's taught, it's taught over time, and its status. But when people find common ground and they know what they need to do, and there's a community and a society that's based off that, at that point, you don't need overseers to tell us how to live. And you see this time and time and again, Congress members and other things telling us this is how you should live. So yep. It's almost like, okay, all right, there's an agenda there on both sides of the house that kind of create these. Yeah, I mean, because I think people are people for the most part.
Absolutely.
But there's some people that vent, and then also kind of goes back to that whole, man, there's right ways of doing things, and there's wrong. There's civilized versus barbarianism, and I don't know. It's just such a crazy time. All right, so come on, folks. Do you have any questions? We have the magic 8 ball to answer some. Okay, what should we ask the magic 8 ball? Oh, okay.
Got a question.
Can someone please explain Antifa? Well, from my understanding, Antifa is it started off as an anti-fascist movement. Mm-hmm. The problem with that, though, is kind of the same thing that reminds me of Nazis and their brown shirts. Because when the Nazi Party, and here again, I'm not a historian. This is just me going from topical what I've learned in my life, and I could be totally off. So I know we'll probably get an email saying I'm probably wrong. That's fine. But and if someone's watching this and you have a better definition of Antifa, or if you're listening to this, by all means use the comments. Come on. Oh, by the way, let me go ahead and put this in the comments. If you want to hop on and chat with us directly, I'm putting that into the Good Questions, Bad Answers stream. So if you want to click on that, you can join us and we can have a conversation about whatever. But going back to it, Antifa, it reminds me of when Nazi Germany, or when Nazis come to power in Germany, in order to basically get power, they created the brown shirts, and they created strife, and they intimidated people, and violence beget violence, and that's the thing about violence. Who wins? The one that's most violent. That's true. It is. But there's unfettered violence that we see in the street now, and then there's also controlled violence response. And the best way I can describe this would be like when there's a wildfire raging, right? There's a wildfire raging in California or Colorado or a host of different places, and it's just burning, right? But what do firefighters do? They go find a strip of land, they burn it, and then when the fire gets there, it gets put out. And so they fight fire with fire, but it's a controlled fire. And so the same thing with violence, when people are violent, and here again, I'm not for violence. I mean, I have to be careful in how I explain this, because it could be taken and misconstrued and misunderstood. But it's kind of like, me personally, I believe that there should probably be militias now out on the street, not enforcing laws, but protecting property and protecting people. And the reason why I say that is because if me as a thug or me as a person went out, or just in general, if I went out and I saw a snake, am I going to touch the snake? No, I'm not, because it looks poisonous. It might strike me. I don't want to get hurt. And the same thing with when it comes to, militias or people that are armed or people that are protecting themselves adequately. People are going to come along and see it as a snake. Like, hey, that's a snake. I don't want to touch it. I'm going to move on to something else. That didn't answer your question at all about Antifa. I'm sorry. I went on a tangent there, Justin. But what are your thoughts? What do you think?
I think I don't know, too much, but I think you kind of, right. It was an anti-fascist thing. I think they're supposed to be somewhat, if you could categorize them, I think they're like liberal and I forgot, someone else just explained it and I'm blanking on it, but they did a good job explaining it. And I don't know. But I want to go back to what you're saying on your tangent, though. I think that's a huge point, is protection of things rather than enforcement of things. And I think that when sometimes people take enforcement, they take it too far. Whereas protection, I feel like there's a more defined line of where you draw that boundary. And I think that we need to do a better job of protecting things and a little bit less of enforcing things.
Right.
And then, but certainly, obviously, things, if they get out of hand, you kind of have to step it up to the next level. But I thought that was a good point that you made, that there's that difference that I think a lot of people don't think about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, and here again, these are all bad answers. So it's crazy. So let's see. Is this storm in the Gulf going to turn into a hurricane? We got the magic 8 ball right here. So let's find out. Outlook not so good. I don't know if that's a good or bad answer.
Yeah, right?
Oh my goodness. All right. Any other questions, folks? Come on. Like I said, this show is your show, so if you don't want to participate, that's fine. But it might be an early night. So let's have a conversation. We kind of talked about things that are going on currently. What are your thoughts? I mean, like I said, what is going on in your life? And what do you think about the situation? What do you think needs to happen in order for things to get fixed? I mean, and here again, we have about 5 people watching, and it's fluctuating between 5 to 7, 8 sometimes. What are your thoughts? Like, what do you think needs to happen in order to find peace? Because I don't think we're very peaceful right now. But anywho,
I did figure out the name of the book.
Okay.
It was A Sound of Thunder by Ray Bradbury.
Oh my gosh, Ray Bradbury.
Yep.
Dude, did you ever watch? It was on Amazon Prime, I believe, and it came out in the 80s. But he had a show called Ray Bradbury Theater.
No, I didn't know that.
Or it was Bradbury Theater. Can't write. The Ray Bradbury Theater, and it was out in the early 80s, and it was on HBO, and then it went to some other show or other. But the first season was fantastic. Like, it was, you want to talk about a show that has like, you can feel it. Like, I mean, it was just a really good, the way they did it. And then, the follow-up seasons weren't that good. I mean, they were still good in their own, but they weren't like as, man, that first season, those shows, they really had a good feel to them. Like, just kind of creepy, kind of eerie, kind of Stephen King-ish, but it was just really kind of just, oh man, fantastic. But, all right, so if you don't want to talk about that, what else would you like to talk about? What's going on in your world? Let's talk about Superman versus Batman. Oh, we already did that.
Something I thought that was kind of interesting and fun, and people can look it up, because I know that with this whole quarantine and everything, a lot of sports have, kind of either postponed or they've been canceled or whatever. Apparently, there's on YouTube this channel that is marble racing, and like it's apparently a whole league. And each of the marbles are the teams of marbles have their own backstory and everything, and people are like betting on them, and it's apparently a very like there's a lot of people who are very enthusiastic about it and get into it. And when I watched like some of like what they do, I couldn't believe all the different races they have and courses that they've made for all these marbles. Like they have like baton passing and all these like Olympic games. It's hilarious.
It's crazy. Like, it's amazing how many like subculture or hobbies, sub things that are out there, because there's some weird stuff out there. I mean, that's that's interesting. Let's real quick. We got some comments. Justin says, I think they gave up a good opportunity for everyone to come together. Everyone knows the guy did it and no one is happy about it. Now the riots and looting are getting all the attention.
I agree.
Right. And that's the thing. Like, what started off as a righteous thing now is becoming an issue. And here's the thing. Like, what happened there was wrong. Everybody that sees it. Like, I was a law enforcement officer at one time, and I'm watching that. I'm like, that's wrong. You don't do that. Now, there's been times where I've gotten tussled with people, and yeah, I put my knee on their neck. And I put my knee on their lower back to get their arm in place to put the handcuffs on. But once I got the handcuffs on, I got them up, set them up where they could breathe, and they put them in the car, and then you move on, but that's a long time, and that was just egregious. But we have a system in place. They are going to go through the system, and here again, I don't know what's going to happen, and I hate to say we don't know the whole story, but it's pretty bad. I mean, it's not, and I'm not defending them. I mean, they are going to go full bore for that. But two wrongs don't make a right. Just because they did that doesn't make, here again, that kind of goes back to that whole, what is civilized, what is not. And I think people are getting tired of living in a non-civilized manner. And honestly, it comes down to fairness. People want to feel like they live in a fair society, and that's where people are getting fed up. People are getting fed up from the top on down, not being held accountable for their actions. People on the left are getting, and it's true, right? I mean, when you see like an injustice happen and you feel like it's not being addressed, those are some serious repercussions. Marcel says this, I wish I had an answer for peace. It's frustrating to feel you have to definitely, I can't read, I'm sorry. It's frustrating that some feel you have to definitively choose sides. If you think Floyd's death was wrong, you're for the riots. And if you think the riots and destruction and violence are wrong, you don't support protest and conviction of a piece of crap officer. And that's true. That's another great point. I am so tired of people assuming that just because I disagree with something, I hate them or whatever. Like, you bring up an awesome point there, Marcel, which, by the way, is her birthday. So happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. So good. And Marcel agrees with Justin, agreed immediate riots and not actual peaceful protests. It's kind of like, if you want to get your point, I mean, if you look at all the successful movements like Gandhi or MLK, those were peaceful protest. Those were peaceful, and they brought the awareness to the point where, man, you know what? They're people. That's they're you agree with them, but when you start acting the fool and you start unbalancing the response, it's just an issue. I mean, it's not going to work. Because anybody that sees that is going to be like, I don't want that for my life. I don't want that for my community. I don't want that for my friends and family. What I mean? It's just not, it's not right. Chris gives us the thumbs up. Thanks, Chris. There was something else I was going to, but going back to the whole, just because I disagree with someone and how they live or what they think I automatically hate someone. I saw a post the other day, or actually today or yesterday, about you can't be a Christian and hate this. You can't be a Christian and hate this. You can't be a Christian and hate this. And it's like, listen, there's a difference between disagreement and hate. I can disagree with someone all day long about their life choices, but I'll be damned if I watch them get beat up in front of me by someone else. Mm-hmm. You know, just because I disagree with someone on how they choose to live their life does not mean I don't care for them as a person, or I don't care for their well-being. And I think that's where the issues lie nowadays. Is we're getting so divided that people, for whatever reason, we just don't live in a civilized society anymore. And I mean, you know, we try to have these ideals of civilization, but man, it's kind of not. And you know, and here again, this is just me talking. I really think I'm under here again, unintended consequences. You know, just because we take something out of society because it's deemed civilized, the unintended consequences of that, should we have done that? And you know, like, and here again, I'm probably gonna lose a lot of audience here, but dueling, you know, when your life was on the line because someone was pissed off at what you said and they took you outside and, you know, they're going to kill you because you said something, you know, that might sound uncivilized, but it also kept people in check. Like, hey, you know, it caused people to be polite with each other because now there is no recourse. I can sit on my keyboard all day long and I can write whatever I want without any repercussions. And I'm totally for free speech. But in some cases, there should be consequences of actions, in my humble opinion. And so when we go back to that whole process of dueling, like, you know, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but keyboard cowboys. Yeah, right. Justin says keyboard cowboys, right.
And I think,
and it doesn't even have to be to the death. I mean, like, you know, just getting punched in the face. I
mean, and to bring up that, you know, a point with that, the especially like the keyboard cowboy thing. There was recently a suicide in Japan of this girl who was, I think she was a wrestler, but then she ended up she was an entertainer, and then she went on a Netflix series, and because of her role, people thought that's who she was and wrote all this hate mail, and so she took it to heart, and unfortunately it, you know, ended her life because she just felt like everybody hated her. And it's kind of like, you know, people could say all these mean stuff behind a keyboard, but I don't know if they could, you know, necessarily say that to her face. And it's kind of ridiculous, I think, that a fictional character, you know, description gets blamed for who you are.
Right. I mean, and I think the problem nowadays is, like I said, you know, we are so quick to action that we don't think about the repercussions of our actions. And if we had things in place, and here again, I'm not saying, you know, I'm not for violence. I'm not saying that we should get a posse together and go, you know, destroy someone's house because they don't necessarily believe with what we agree with. But no, I'm saying, like, there should be systems in place to well, if you really believe that, well, let's talk about it. And then if it can't, and then we can't agree to disagree, well, then let's step in the ring. And I mean, I don't know. You know, I don't know. It's a crazy world, and there's a lot of different things going on now. Let's see, 45 minutes in. And I could be wrong. Like I said, this is all bad answers, and Lord knows, you know, what I think may not. Sometimes I don't even agree with what I think. So,
right? You say something, and then later on, you're like,
yeah. Well, you know, you think about things, and that's another thing about personal growth, right? I mean, as we grow, and I think that's, you know, this is an important point too. We need to be aware of what's going on, but we also need to be aware of ourselves too and how we see things, because we all have biases. We all have things that you know, happen to us personally. Okay, so none of us see a situation as it is. We see it through the prism of who we are. And, people that go through different situations that have either darkened the glass that they look through or lightened the glass that they look through. So we have to hold ourselves accountable of how are we viewing this? Because when we do that and we are truly aware of our own, as we grow, we start seeing things differently. And I always said this when it comes to personal growth, when you're climbing a tree, when you're on the third branch up that tree, the view is going to be totally different than when you were at the first branch. And the view at the top of the tree is going to be completely different than the view at the bottom of the tree. And that's what personal growth is. And that's what learning is. When you learn about a situation or you learn about different aspects of it, you have a different and broader view of it and a better understanding. So, there's that.
I've definitely noticed that, like, since now that I own my own business, I used to have a flip side view of business owners. And, I'm like, oh, they act like, I've got all this and that and all these things. And I'm like, kind of thinking that, they're just kind of, wasting either their money or they're just kind of acting like they're above other people and whatnot. And I'm not saying that they, business owners should act like they're above people, but I used to have that impression of the things they owned and how they present themselves. But when owning my own business, I've come to realize that there's a lot of hard work that goes into it, and there's a lot of, you have to push yourself very hard to get to where you want to go. And
right.
And it's not, anyone can make money. Making money is not the difficult part. Being successful is the difficult part. And
Yeah.
and so I think that to be successful, you have to have a lot of personal growth. And that is what I've learned to respect of people who own businesses now and are successful in that way, is that they've had to go through a lot of hurdles of, being a better version of themselves so that they can grow to the next level with their business. And,
Right.
it was just one of those things that, like, back when I was working, a job, I, had some malice towards some of the owners of companies and stuff like that. But now that I look back, I can be like, what, they had gone through a tough time and now they're in a different position in their life. But I can respect how, it took for them to get to that journey and how they've earned what they have in their life.
Right. And you bring up an important point. There's a difference between, there's also a bunch of charlatans out there too.
Yes.
Right. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, there's some really good business owners out there, and there's some really good people that will bend over backwards to help you out to get you where you want to go. But then you got to be careful, because there's some, shysters out there that will take advantage of you and take your money and then turn around and make it look like they know what they're doing, and they don't. And Justin says this: how about when that third branch breaks and the second branch gets stuck up your rear? That'll teach you to hold on to that third branch even better, or a little better.
I like that.
Sometimes that happens. Sometimes as we grow, sometimes whatever reason, sometimes we'll get, and this has happened in my life where I've grown, but then maybe I got a little, not arrogant, but, there's been situations where I've had to eat crow, because as I've grown, I'm like, well, blah blah blah, and then I'm humbled by either an event or something, and I'm like, gosh, Josh, you're such an idiot. And that's when my third branch breaks and I fall back to the second branch, and that's the thing. It's like, first off, you got to take responsibility of where you are, right? Because nothing ever, like, if the tree grows, it's going to be, I mean, okay, that's a bad analogy, but if you're going to climb the tree, it's up to you to climb the tree. It's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to wake up on top of the tree until you work at it. And like you said, we talked about this the other night. When it comes to growing into the person that you want to be, it takes time to grow into that. Like, there's so many people out there that want to be millionaires.
Yep.
But the problem is they are not built to handle that.
Absolutely.
There's so many stories of people that win the lottery and they are worse off than, like 2 years later, they're worse off than they were before. And it's interesting because when I was overseas, I had the chance to make pretty decent money. And the thing I found when it comes to money is all it does is it amplifies who you are. And we talked about that the other night too.
Yep.
But I realized it then as well, because all it does, if you're a jerk, you're going to be a bigger jerk. If you're gentle or not gentle, if you're compassionate, you're going to be more compassionate. If you're kind, you're going to be more kind. But people that don't grow into it organically, they're never going to keep it. Or if they're not open-minded about where they are. And as you grow into that business owner or that, these life lessons that you learn, well, you're going to hold on to that. And then you're going to learn to be able to recreate that over and over and over again. That's why people that are, that have built their businesses, they can do it all day long. If their business goes under or they sell it, they can do it again.
Yep.
It's like they've taught themselves to fish.
Yeah, exactly.
And they don't need anybody to really help them out. I mean, they do, but in a different way. Oh my gosh, Sam, we're probably going to Sam says, tuning in a bit late, lots to say about these recent events. Look forward to seeing what you guys thought. Probably not. Like I said, we live up to our show well. These are bad answers.
Absolutely.
But I don't know. These are just Sam. Should have been here, man. He could have hopped on with us, and we probably could have had a really interesting conversation. But we'll do that some other time. There's a lot of things going on in the world today. We got to take care of each other. We got to take care of ourselves. We got to take care of each other, because at the end of the day, no one else will. I mean, the police are overwhelmed, and so check your neighbors. Check, see about where they are. And here again, a lot of us don't live in areas where we really need to be concerned. But those of you that are in areas, it's always good to be prepared. Don't be caught flat-footed. Be aware of your surroundings. Don't be in places you shouldn't be. And even though you may want to support certain things. Oh, and that's another thing. Sorry, as I'm talking about this, the thing I get frustrated about is when these protests do happen. If it's a peaceful protest, well, and here again, I'm okay with people protesting. I'm totally okay with that. It's when people start rioting that I have an issue with. And so it is up to the people that are really and I've seen this happen. There's actually been some cases this past week that we've seen where people that are protesting, they see these other people that are starting to act the fool, and they are then they start holding them accountable. And I think that's great. If you're protesting and you see people getting out of hand, well, you and your buddy need to go take care of it if you can, because then it takes that whole message and turns it upside down.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, I mean, shoot, now we're getting into the conspiracy theory. Time for our tinfoil hats. Just who is putting those bricks out there?
Right.
And a lot of people are like, well, there's George Soros or it's whatever. I don't know. It could be because someone has an agenda. You always hear these like, well, who's hiring these protesters? I'm sorry. And here again, I don't know how true it is, but I've heard in some places, it has a lot of the arrests were out of town or out of state people that were brought in to protest, professional protesters. And it's kind of, if Justin says this, Hillary, here again, I'm not going to mention any names or any left or right things, but you got to follow the money, and you got to follow who stands to benefit the most out of it's. And you know what? If this wasn't an election year,
exactly,
I don't think we would have seen anything that's crazy as we've seen this year with the COVID response or this. I think because honestly, I believe it's being instigated. I believe that there's something behind all of this that is put. And like I said, who puts bricks out on street corners? I'm interested in that. I really want to find out what's going on there. You know, I don't know. And here again, it could be a conspiracy theory, but hey, it's tinfoil hat time, so it's okay. We can talk about this. Tinfoil hat time. Is there any conspiracy theories that you want to talk about, guys? What's COVID again? Oh, so true. You know, and that's the thing. It's like
feels like forever since we've talked about it.
Right. Justin says this: they want mail-in voting real bad. That's and honestly, just by people protesting and rioting and getting away with it. Obviously, COVID's not that bad.
Exactly.
Because if that's the case, you know, I think voting in person is what it should be. Because, and for those of you that are watching or listening to this in the future, personally, and I've read it before, mail-in voting is very susceptible to fraud. And honestly, me personally, I could be wrong, but I think that's the only way that a certain group could win this year. Because just look at who they have. I mean, here again, I don't want to get political, but seriously. And the sad thing is in 2016, we had 2 candidates. And at the end of the day, you're like, really? This is the best we can come up with? And the same thing with 2020. Really? Yep. This is the best we could come up with? And so I'm really kind of concerned about this 2-party system that we have because it, you know, you've had people in positions of power for 30 plus years and they still haven't fixed it. Political is one thing, the truth is the other. That's right. I do tend to agree with that. I'm an optimist, but I'm also a realist. And so sometimes that gets kind of in the mix. But Chris is right. What happened to COVID? You know, that was a serious thing, or it was supposed to be, but now I guess not. But then again, you know, those with minds and logic, they could see the numbers. I mean, nothing changed. Like if you look at the death rates for the past 6 years, they're the same. Now I could be wrong on that. I could be wrong. But when I looked it up the other day, it wasn't that there wasn't any spike due to COVID. And then obviously you see a bunch of the different hospitals writing out, you know, COVID related deaths because they got more money out of it.
Yep.
All right. Chris Rolling says this. Unfortunately, it takes multi-millions to even consider running. I say we cut that pay for government. Well, most of it is done through donations, and the problem with that is it can get to the point where, like I said, I think there's a lot of corruption going on, and there definitely needs to be. And I think people are getting sick and tired. I know that I am, and I know that most of America is getting tired of people not being held accountable for their actions. You know, and it's turning into a 2-class society of people that can get away with stuff and the people that can't. And that's where the real turmoil ends up. You know,
absolutely.
You know, no one likes for anybody to, you know, let me try to think of how I want to word this. Someone standing in line doesn't like for anybody else to cut in line, right? We can all agree to that. You know, and if we have laws and we have things in place and it's everything's kind of, that's kind of strange. That needs to be looked into. But all of us know, at least lately, like with some of these things, we have this underlying knowledge that people will not be held accountable for their actions at a certain level. And I think that's just wrong. Right. Personal Sam says this. Personal accountability could fix this whole country.
Absolutely.
Right. But we don't teach that anymore. You know, we don't even teach people how to think anymore.
No.
Thomas Sowell, which I don't know what he's not a philosopher. Hold on, I heard a quote by Thomas Sowell, and he is an American economist, and he said something to the effect of, you know, Tommy doesn't Tommy, it's not the problem that Tommy doesn't think anymore. He's not taught how to think. The problem with Tommy is he mistakes emotion for thinking. Now, I totally butchered his quote, and you should look it up. But it's a fantastic quote, and that's the problem with America today, is we take emotion and we think that is thinking. No, that's feeling. And there's a difference between feelings and thinking. It's the same thing. There's a difference between logic and response, or just or letting emotion. Thoughts controlled by emotion, thoughts controlled by logic, and there's just two different things. But anyway, I digress. That gets hot. I got to take it off. All right. Well, we are an hour in. I hope you enjoyed the show, guys. I don't know how this one was. last show was really good. I thought the last show was fantastic. Awesome. But obviously, sometimes sometimes the shows are good. Sometimes they're not. We're learning as we go here. If you have anything that you want to say, be sure to use the comments now. If you have any pointers, or if you think, tell us what you think. You can contact us at goodquestionsbadanswers@gmail.com if you have a topic or a question you want to talk about in the future that you might not be able to come online and talk to us face to face with. As always, you can come like the page, and we also have a YouTube page, so you can also go see old shows there of the same name. So. Other than that, I think we're good for this evening. Tim, you got anything else, or
no?
All right, folks. Thank you so much for joining with us. Those that are watching in the future, thank you for listening, and we appreciate your time. Until next Tuesday, take care of each other. God bless you, and take care of yourselves and each other. Which I know I just said that, but it bears repeating.
Yes.
And Tim, as always, I appreciate you being here as well. So thanks. Have a good night. God bless.